Hi, and welcome to Herstories. Today I'm very excited. I have a special guest, Laurre Ostrofsky. Thank you so much for coming and enjoying her stories today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, I've known Laurre a really long time. We were just talking about how long we've known each other, and I truly can say the minute I met Laurre, I liked her right away. There's some people that you just find inspiring and knowledgeable and passionate and just everyday happy and kind. I've seen you evolve. I've seen you gone through, some really challenges in your life. I've seen you overcome them with grace and, just you found a way to get through it, but then found your passion. I've loved seeing you find your direction and success along the way. And I truly say, I've loved, we haven't talked that often, but I look and you've inspired me all along this journey for where it's led your life. So I'm thrilled to have you here, and I can't wait for people to learn more about you.
Oh, thank you so much, Aline. I just love how our life is kind of intersected over time, and here we are again.
Here we are again. So let's start off. Who is Laurre? Tell me a little bit about you and your background, and let's kick it off that way.
So the first thing that I will tell you is that I am an awkward introvert because because I feel like as soon as I say that I'm an introvert and that I'm awkward, that it actually opens up for people to feel like it's okay to be awkward. And interviews are awkward. So let's just say that. Um, I my background is in marketing, similar to yours, Aline. And 17 years ago now, I started my coaching business, working mainly with women who are kind of mid-career A students, gonna follow the plan, gonna get shit done, and have found themselves in a place where I could keep doing what I'm doing, but it's not as meaningful to me. It's not as meaningful to please everybody else. I
Yeah.
need to please myself, and oh, what does that even mean? Um, and so. And so we build that together. So a good number of my clients are maybe starting their own business for the first time, even mid-career, or going after a new role in a new industry that they've always had in mind, but never had the confidence or clarity to really go after it. So I love working with them. I have a couple books, and I'm a speaker, which is why I need to say that I'm an awkward introvert, because being an awkward introvert and a speaker makes you think, makes people think like, oh, you're extroverted. No, I'm not. I'm just very awkwardly in front of people. Um, and I think I'm also very much myself and
Mhm.
scared and doing it anyway about almost everything in my life.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting, you mentioned a few things which we'll lead into is, I think we all get to a point in our life where it's status quo. Oh, I can't make changes and I've already been doing this so long. And I think that kind of leads into your, scared and doing it anyway, because I remember you doing this. And I remember being like, I was scared almost for you to go, well, this is kind of the path we've given, and we've talked about it. I found you excellent. We've done PR together, analyst relations together, marketing together. You're amazing at it, but you also said it wasn't your end all be all. And
Yeah.
even though, and I've talked about this in other podcasts, that just because you're good at it doesn't mean you should do it. And I think
Yes.
you're giving people skills to go, you know what, it's okay. No matter what age you are, you can make a change. And I think that's really inspiring. Women really do need to make changes sometimes. If you're not happy, why would you want to continue that way in any aspect of your life?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that and I know we're going to get into this, but like, it helps when tough things happen and you realize the thing that I thought I was scared of, which back when I was 28 was quitting my job and disappointing my family and having my colleagues mad at me. The thing I was afraid of was so not as scary as being in the hospital, which is what I ended up being in the hospital. And so having something in our lives, and the beauty and challenge of living as long as we have is almost all of us have had something that is big enough to go like, one, life is really precious.
Yeah.
Two, gosh, that thing I thought I was scared of, there's way more scary things out there.
Yeah.
And so this one, I might be able to push myself into. I might be able to go a little further out than I thought I could before.
Yeah, and let's lead into that because, and I appreciate you being so honest about it. I've talked to a lot of health crisis survivors, no matter what that is. And I'd love you
Yeah.
to talk about what happened to you because I knew you during that time, and it's scary from me as a friend, but what you went through. But then, as you said, it was life changing. So if you don't mind, I'd love you to talk about going back to that time and telling people
Yeah,
kind of what
sure.
happened.
Yeah, so I was in the upswing, the young upswing of my life. So I was 28, I was living in New York City. I had a 401k. I was dating a guy my mom liked. I was climbing the corporate ladder, had, positive um, annual reviews, and didn't really like my job. As we've talked about, yeah, like marketing and PR, I was okay at, I was good at, but it wasn't the thing. And and really, I think that it's important to have this part of the story. So I took a weekend and I said, I think I really need to leave my job. And I think I need to go and figure out what's next. I don't know what it is, but I let me see how much savings I have. And I realized I had a couple months of savings, and I was like, okay, I think I can do it. And I scheduled meetings with my three bosses at the time for later that Monday afternoon. And it just so happens that Monday morning, I had a doctor's appointment. And because I'd had this ear infection and I'd never had an ear infection before and it wouldn't go away, and they had me do an MRI, which is apparently fairly normal to see if there was something else going on. And I found out that morning that I had a brain tumor. So the day I was going to quit my job,
Talk about world.
three, yeah, exactly,
What if it was
three
the day
hours
after?
before.
Like it changed your narrative, truly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So everything changed. So, there I am, like so many folks with health scares, like looking at an MRI and saying, oh, this is that moment. This is that moment I hear about from other
And you
people.
had no
And
idea to that severity. Like when you saw the
no,
doctor's face and you're like, oh, something's wrong. You were like literally from going in, I have an ear infection to I have a brain tumor. Literally
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And especially as an A student and as a young person, I was 28. I had gotten lucky to that point, like my life had been pretty average. And like, like, oh, I did all the right things. I ate my vegetables
Yeah,
and
you're in
I
great
went
shape, you're healthy,
my
like
annual doctor's visit. And it's like, wait, good, like bad things don't happen to people who do everything right.
yeah.
So it actually, the A student in me was like, wait, like bad things can happen
Yeah.
even when you do everything right.
Yeah.
How does that work? Yeah. So it basically just changed my trajectory. I spent 4 months trying to change from doing alternative medicine, getting ready for these surgeries, which ended up being three surgeries, supposed to be one. I was surprised after the first one that I needed another one, and then surprised after the next one that I needed the one after that. Um, Ended up leaving my job, traveling, starting work that you and I were brought together again in doing, and then starting my coaching work that I'm doing now.
So when you ended up finding out, you because your job you had healthcare, which I think is such an important conversation. What
Yeah.
if if the domino would have been you said I'm leaving, and then it would have been the doctor appointment like we talked about the day after. So you had good healthcare coverage, and that helped you through this. How long were you? What was the recovery period to get to the point where you're like, I'm done. This is where. What was the time lapse in that for you to go? Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I think this is an important thing to say about privilege. Like there are a lot of levels of privilege here. I think as white women, we should
Yeah,
state our privileges there.
absolutely.
And it also was a period of time where healthcare was pretty good. And I had, I mean, if you think about all of the things that were in place, I was in an office of 30 people, 28 of them women. Our head of the company had just lost her husband to a brain tumor. And she changed the healthcare policy to have full coverage for folks. So I had probably $150,000 worth of surgeries that I paid $2,000 for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, I don't think that even healthcare coverage even exists today. Um,
No,
the
and I don't think so.
Yeah,
What year? So we talk about your age. What year was that again?
that was 2004.
Yeah, so think of how
Wow.
2004 to today, and you
Yeah,
know, I had surgery a few years ago, and I was 100th in the female situation, and $130,000. And once again, because of my privilege and working for a company, I paid two
yeah,
to 5,000.
right,
And that's where you
right.
look and go, you know, but your boss changing the narrative to be full coverage also changed your path. So
Yeah,
that's incredible. So then,
yeah.
so what was the time lapse then from, yeah,
Yeah, so I had three surgeries within a 2 month period of time, and then um, it probably took me another year. So it took me a couple months of like a couple naps a day, like at least 2 or 3 naps a day. I would say that took me, yeah, about another 4 months, and then it probably took me another year to be able to um, go on a subway,
yeah.
because just all of the jostling was just really hard for me.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and
but
one of the questions I
I got
have
lucky.
for you is like, you know, I always find it inspiring because how do you have the strength? Like from, and I know your personality, so it's also, I would have never doubted anything else from you, but you had to have those moments where you're like, why me? Why does this have to happen? How am I going to survive? And am I going to survive? Which, you know, and thrive, because I think it's the combination of you did find a way to thrive. How'd you find the strength? Just determination, like never going to give up? Like, what is that? Because I find that so powerful. How to, because some people don't have that positiveness to have the
Yeah.
will to survive, you know?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It became really clear to me that my sole job was to focus on my own health, was to focus on getting better. And I just didn't talk about anything else. I didn't talk about what if this doesn't work or what if something goes wrong. And
You never
the
had those
more,
thoughts. You
oh,
never,
I totally had those
but
thoughts, but
you
I
didn't.
just never talked about them.
Interesting. Yeah.
And once in a while, like I would have pity parties. Totally okay. So like the day I found out and the next week, month, I laid in bed, in between going to work, and I just, cried. And I think that that is really important. Um, and I didn't want to go in the hospital, and I didn't like it, and I tried to make the best of it. But I also knew that I think the biggest lesson for me, and that's the thing that I talk about the most, is I learned what we really have control over and what we don't. I think most of the time we spend worrying and thinking about and planning for lots of things we don't have any control over. We have no control over how people react to things. We have no control over what's going to happen in the world, except the our actions we're taking. But we do have control over what we think about a situation, how we talk about a situation, the words we use, which are really powerful,
Yeah.
the people we surround ourselves with, and ultimately the actions that we choose. And that's where I narrowed my focus. It's like, okay, what do I have control over here? I do not have control over whether I have to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
I have control over who I take with me. I have control over what I say and what I say to the doctors.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to focus on.
And you and I've talked about, you know, and you and I've been very raw about our lives, and you and I've talked about not being a victim. I refuse in my life, in my own, you know, small little world, not to be a victim. And I feel like you had that same attitude of, you can be the pity party, you can do all that, but it's you being positive about it, and that's really me watching you go through this. You didn't, you never were that victim of like, oh, it's me. And you hear people that I do feel like that your body feels that, your mood feels
Yeah.
that, your friends and the people that are going to help you get through it feel it. And I don't feel, to me, that was one of your greatest attributes, is that you weren't, yes, you had times where I can only imagine you alone going through why, but I feel like
Mm-hmm.
you never had that victim. you are going to survive. And it's also the doctors, the treatment, like some people don't, but you did. And I think not being a victim really was part of that narrative as well.
It's so interesting that you say that because I didn't, but you're right. I didn't. I think there's a difference. There's toxic positivity, which we need to talk about. There's a difference between being positive and focused and toxic positivity. Like I had pity parties. It sucked, and one of the best things that someone said to me when I was about to go through things is that she said, "It's okay to say it sucks."
Yeah.
And that kind of permission was so important to me because I felt a bit of that toxic positivity that, like, all right, the only way I'm going to get through is if I'm so positive. And yet, I think that allowance of like, it sucks and we're still moving in the right direction, we're still moving towards health. And the other thing that really changed for me is finding the smallest moments of joy.
Yeah.
Every day I was like, oh, I slept a little less today. I walked a little further. I saw a butterfly. And it really, that life slowed down for me. I think the beauty of the one being in the hospital bed as opposed to the caregiver,
Yeah.
is that my life got really small really fast. It's like I ate mac and cheese and I was so excited about it. I'm going to be excited about that today. I bought pajamas that were pink that had little green frogs on it and they made me smile. And it was like those small things again that I had control over that would bring a little bit of delight. And I think that is what builds strength for me. It's so interesting. I didn't think of the word strength, but
Yeah.
that delight strengthened me.
Yeah. And so you get through this, and then you said you were like, I need to change. So tell me more about that. And you traveled, and like that was almost your metamorphosis to me to be who you are today. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that I'm I'm now seeing the cycle in other clients and people who have gone through major crises in their life, is that it's kind of like having a really bad cold and you can't breathe out of your nose, and then suddenly like you get your first great day and it's like suddenly you can breathe and you're like, "Oh my God, this is a brand new world." I can't believe how great it is to breathe out of both nostrils. That carried me like that. Oh my God, I can be out in the world. I can go anywhere and do anything. One of the first things that I did, I mean, is go on vacation. I was privileged enough. I had savings. I could travel, and so I started booking travel. And I
What
also,
was your first trip? Do you
what was
remember?
my first trip? Well, okay, so the first thing that I did was kind of crazy, which is it wasn't a very far trip, but I decided, so my birthday was like within a month of my last surgery, and I decided that I wanted to go rafting,
Interesting.
and it was like this day that they released more like tributaries to make the rafting more wild. And here I am on a tube and I'm like under 100 pounds because I've just gone through all these surgeries and I'm like flipping over and stuff. And I'm like, oh, right, that wasn't such a good idea when you're like literally at your weakest. But it was really exhilarating. So I would say that is the first thing I really was like, I am going to like
What
live and really
a
live.
wild
Um,
trip. That's
yeah,
lovely.
yeah. And then I applied to go to art school because that was a thing that I had wanted to do since I was in high school and never thought I was good enough. And I was like, I don't care anymore. I'm
Yeah,
gonna do it.
you're going to do it. So,
Yeah.
one thing, so leading into, this next chapter of your life, I remember you, and I'd love you to talk about it. So, your positivity, as I said, but I remember the hug tour. I remember you doing, and I want to caveat this. Anyone listening, this was before people really thought to be like that kindness. And I think we've talked about this. The world has kind of shifted and we're not as nice as we used to be. You did this you were so forward thinking of this. And I'd love you to talk about that because it was something that I remember just admiring, going, wow, she's really pushing to be kind and compassionate. And so I'd love you to talk about the hug tour because that to me was just
Yeah.
So forward thinking because we need that
Oh,
more now. So
thank you.
let's
Thank
talk
you.
about that piece.
Yeah, that was actually during a kind of a struggle time as well. So I had moved to Washington, D.C. I'd gotten a divorce. I'd moved to Washington, D.C. I um, was starting work there as well as yeah, the consulting work that we were doing together. I had had another relationship, big breakup, and I found myself in an empty apartment with a couch and a TV. And I was feeling pity party was happening. And I watched this interview with Maya Angelou, and she's looking into the screen and she said, "You have to give what you have to give." And I've never, I'd never met her, but I was like, when Maya says something, you do it. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, yeah, I feel like I'm in this tough spot, but like, um, I there are a lot of people that are helping me right now, like that are supporting me. Maybe I can really thank them. What's a simple thing that I can do? And I'm like, I like hugs. Maybe I can hug the people I care about. And so the next day I announced on Twitter, and which was really big at the time, that I was going to walk around DC. And if I knew you, this was like not about the free hug movement where you can hug anybody. This is like hugging people I care about. So I created a route. I published it on Facebook and Twitter. And I'm like, this is where I'm going. If you're nearby, I'll stop in. And I made chocolate covered figs to stop by my accountant's office because I thought that that counted as a hug. And so I started there. I walked around, and then the how I knew it was real, because people were like, oh, how fun this is. Of course, like I'll stop in your office. I'll, meet you at lunchtime or something. But then there was this woman that I didn't know very well. Um, and she texted me and she's like, oh, I could really use a hug today. And she was working for like the Department of the Interior or something. So you went to the like a big,
Big government
Washington
building.
D.C. office.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there she is, like in her like lawyer suit, her heels. She's standing next to a hot dog truck. She's staring at her BlackBerry, and I'm like, there she is. And I'm like, wouldn't that be really great to have a running hug? Because like 3-year olds run and hug, and that's really fun. So I just like the light turned red, and I just started running full force across the street at this person that we knew each other but not very well. And so she looked up from her phone and she's like, who's this person running? Oh, I know that person. Oh, they're coming to hug me. You can see the change on her face. And then she started jumping up and down in front of this office, in front of this hot dog truck, like jumping. And then I went across the street. We hugged. We talked for 5 minutes. Like I went on, she went back into the office. And it was like that moment where I was like, it really matters when we show and tell people we care about that we care about them. We rush that all the time. Like when we, go to an event or meet someone for lunch, we often like rush the entrance or rush the ending. And it's like those are the most important moments. And so yeah. So anyway, I started going on a hug tour. There's a uh, there's a whole hug wall on my website, and you can
It's
see
I'll
all
I
hugs.
believe it. It's and the photos are so amazing. You can feel the love and the
Yeah,
compassion and that was hard and with COVID because I'm such a hugger.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
remember, and then also with honestly, like, the Me Too movement, I am so used to hugging, like, I work with a lot of men, and they were like, is it okay for me to hug you? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, that's something about that, telling people you love them and doing that. And I think you were really, I say, forward thinking and being like, why wouldn't we share the way we feel? Like, I grew up in a household that we said we loved each other all the time and we hugged, and it was
yeah.
implicit. You knew where you stood, and I feel like it's so important for everyone to know. I never want a moment in time where someone doesn't know how I feel about them, because you don't know the future, and
That's
I
it.
don't want to, I want no regrets for that. But I think that so I'll put a link in because everyone has to see what you did with
Oh,
that.
that's awesome.
And then I would love to, like, leading into, we talked about, you have two books, you have and I love, really, your mantra has been, you're scared but you're doing it anyway. Tell
Yeah.
me about the evolution of the books, because to me, like, that's my next stage of like, oh, I really want to start writing books. And I've always found that really inspirational, that you really, as you were scared, but you did it. So,
Yeah.
I'd love you to talk about kind of leading into that.
Yeah, I think that, actually it's interesting because it kind of is related to our marketing background because in marketing, the thing that you learn is your ideal customers or your ideal audience will often tell you the thing that they want
Yeah.
and tell you the thing that they value.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave my first speech ever about how my brain tumor will change your life, and I was very awkward, introverted, and I thought I might throw up, but I got it through it. And one of the things in my speech was talking about what a lesson I learned from my brain tumor was that you can be scared and you can do it anyway. And sometimes because you have to, I was gonna have to go to the hospital. I was going to have to go into surgery. Um, and also there's scary things in our lives, like potentially disappointing someone, like quitting and starting something new, like telling someone you loved them first. There's these scary things in our lives, and we can do them anyway. We can survive them and also really learn a lot from them. And so I was talking about this in the speech, and I had this. Behind me was this image of Braveheart, of the blue paint moment where he's, you know, rallying the
Yeah,
troops.
warrior mode, warrior mode.
Yeah, and it was like, and it was like what I said was, I'm on stage tonight because I'm scared and doing it anyway. Like, and I roared, and then everyone in the audience roared back at me. And I realized through the rest of the night, people kept coming up and saying, I'm scared and doing it anyway too, like over and over and over again. And what I realized in that was there's something about when we own
Mm-hmm.
our own fear or insecurities that it gives permission and opens the door and welcomes other people to admit
Yep.
their own.
And
And
being
so,
transparent about it, Lori, because I think
yeah,
you and I have talked about it. It's like the more I open up about my life and my particular story, wow, the floodgates open. And I think you
yeah,
almost exposing yourself and being so, deep into the core of like, hey, I'm scared to be up here. I don't love public speaking. I'm introverted. People are like, wait, I'm the same. But she's doing it. And look how successful
yeah,
she is. Because I joke like, I know you're introverted, but I also don't see you as that almost, because you don't have that, even though you're scared, you exude that confidence, which I think then helps other people to expose, hey, here's what's going on in my world. So I'm sure
yeah.
that's part of it too.
It doesn't require us to be brave. I think that's really important. So, doing it anyway doesn't mean that you're fearless.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that like fear has banished and you're like completely brave and completely confident and completely have everything figured out. Um, it just means that you're taking another step.
Yeah.
It just means that you're bringing fear along with you, that you're not letting it stop you. And then it's like, okay, we're going to figure this out together. And I think and that's really what encouraged me to write my first book and to call it I'm Scared and Doing It Anyway, because recognizing that, exactly as you said, kind of my ownership is
Yeah.
opening the door for others um, to be brave and find their own path.
And don't you feel like, I can't imagine, because I've had so many stages in my life, as you know me, that I've had fear. But to me, fear actually makes me stronger. I
Yeah,
can't imagine, because I know some people that they have no fear, but I can't imagine living where you don't have obstacles. Because to me, I get only stronger and better as a human, and as my best version of myself. And
yeah,
I wonder if you feel the same, that fear does help. Being scared does help you achieve more. Because if you're complacent to me and you're like, oh, that there's something you're missing in the kind of evolution of who you become. Because like every day you evolve. Um,
yeah. Similar to that, I often say to clients that if they weren't a little scared of this next
mhm.
career leap, they wouldn't really want it that badly. Like
Sure.
the fear is actually an indicator that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because the alternative, as you said, is the complacency. It's a safe choice, so I'm not scared. I'm not frightened that it might not work. Being frightened that it might not work is actually, I mean, as long as it's not debilitating, is an indicator keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. No, it's really true. So we talked about, so you have the book Scared and Doing It Anyway, but then you also have Simply Leap, which I love. And I'm just looking, it's like 7 lessons on facing fear and enjoying the crap out of your life. How do you come to, and I'd love you to talk a little bit about, so you had your first book and then talk about the second one. Cause I love, first of all, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so the first book is a memoir. It's really about my leaps. It's about my brain tumor and really the choices I made out of that difficult situation to reinvent my life.
Yeah.
And Simply Leap was written at the 10-year mark in my coaching journey and my business journey about my most successful clients and sharing their leaps because they leapt in so many different ways, moving cross country, changing careers, changing relationships, like really owning themselves, like
All
who they
aspects of
are.
their life, like not just career,
Absolutely.
all these pieces. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I noticed that even though each of them were so different, they had these 7 things in common, these 7 lessons in common. And so the book is really what I call a happy how-to. So
Mm-hmm.
it takes you through the 7 lessons. It breaks it down in a really easy way. It gives you a little story about them. It gives you some homework because A students love their homework.
Yeah.
And what I've heard from folks who read it is that they can see where they are along those 7 lessons. They can see where they are at any moment. Like, oh, I'm really needing the 5th lesson right now. This is the moment I am in my leap. I'm going to check in here. And so it's really fun. To me, it's the primer for, okay, you want to do a leap. You want to leap. It's time, or someone is ready to leap.
Yeah.
Um, Start here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, it's so inspiring because I think sometimes just starting is really hard for people. That first step of what do you do? And then, you get through the first step and it's like, you're helping people know how to navigate it. Because there's parallels to, as you said, moving cross country, your career, relationships. There are certain patterns that can,
Yeah.
help people do that, successfully in a journey type of process.
Yeah, and so much intimidation around or overwhelm around leaping is about seeing the final place and being or like
Mhm.
it's so far away or there's so many steps. And it's really about, okay, what's the one today or what's the one in the next hour? Don't
Yeah.
worry as much about that one. Focus here. And so it's nice to have a buddy. It's nice to have a companion for
Yeah.
your leap who's believing in you. And I talk about in there that I'm like your cheerleader off screen going, yeah, you're doing it, which is pretty much what I do on a daily basis. It's awesome.
Well, and it's awesome, and people need it. Like you need someone in your corner to go, "You've got this. You're gonna do it." And that to me, sometimes just knowing someone's on your side is so important.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you? So when you have clients, how do they go through what their challenges are, and then like I'd love to hear like, how do you help someone right when they're coming to you and they're like, "Oh, I've got this," and like, how do you begin with a client? Is basically kind of where
Mhm.
I'm curious about.
Yeah. So most of my clients are like, as I said, are A students. And I would say the majority of them say something like this in our beginning session, which is if I knew what I wanted, I'd be doing it already. This isn't about rewriting your resume.
Yeah.
This is about I need to clarify what it is, the direction I'm actually heading in, because I know how to make things happen. And so, where we start in the first couple sessions is your ideal work life. We do this full brainstorm on how are we going to know we've succeeded? Like, what are but okay, so whether you're applying for a new job, let's say, or starting a business, um, most of us are trapped in trying to figure out the Googleable term. Like, what is the 2-word description of who I am and what I do? Because then I know what to type in
Yeah.
and find, or I know what to tell people. But if I don't have that yet, especially because if I'm reinventing, I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we start with a brainstorm of all the small things.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours you want to work in a day, what time you want to work, what you feel about travel, what you feel about benefits, the size of teams you want to work in, how much alone time and writing time or thinking time you want versus out in the world, how much standing. or sitting you want, like all of these little details. And then kind of go towards, how are you going to know at the end of the day that you're done?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question because most of us don't think about it
No.
going in, but it's like, how are you going to know when you get to that new place that you're done for the day? And how are you going to feel successful? Like, what are the things that are going to feel good? Oh, I helped somebody today,
Yeah.
or I strategized I figured out a big problem.
Mhm.
Gosh, I really want to solve problems. Okay, good. And those are the things that we end up piecing together from the beginning into, how are you going to talk to people in your life about it? How people want to help you.
Mhm.
How do we ask them a good question where they'll be able to say yes? Okay, yes, I will introduce you to that person. Yes, I will share your resume with someone. Or yes, I will go with you to your first rental property to see what it looks like. It's like when we ask really clear questions because we know the direction we're heading, it makes it easier. And so it really starts with, how are we going to know that the pieces are in place? Well, first we need to know what the pieces are.
I love that, Lori. What a wonderful way to start to really understand what someone doesn't know they want to do, but then helping them navigate it.
Yeah.
What's your average, like, you have clients in all different, walks of life, all different. What's kind of, is there a certain age? Is there a certain, are you seeing a pattern with your clients? Because to me, I have my youngest son, as you know, is a senior this year. These are all the questions that because he doesn't know what he wants to do in college. And I'm like, but these are all the questions that I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want? How do you want to be perceived? And so it's, because you
Mm-hmm.
really can be young, but also like to my age,
Yeah.
and older and beyond. So what is your kind of makeup and your demographic of your clients?
So the majority of folks that I tend to work with are have already succeeded in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's likely that they've been praised for being good at something, um, risen in the ranks in some way, figured stuff out, and are seen by others as the folks that get stuff done, the folks that can be counted on, the folks that make the right choices. And that has kind of trapped them in a little bit of a box. They're looking for the next thing. But I would say it's usually mid-career folks. So I would say
And
30s to
age, then
50s.
it just is really mid-career for what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's likely that you've had some kind of success. So I've worked with 20, folks in their 20s because they've already been an A student.
Yeah.
That they've already like, oh, I already succeeded at this first thing, because most of us have multi careers now anyway. I've
Yeah.
already succeeded at this first thing, but that isn't the next thing. What's the next thing? So yeah, so that's usually the, like, what's the next thing is the question that they're
I,
coming to me
I
with.
love it. I love that because I do think, especially the younger generation, they're reaching success. Like, it took me a little bit longer. In theory, like I
Yeah,
have young people on my team, and I'm always like, wow, you're already light years. Obviously, technology, life's different, but I see them jumping and leaping a lot faster. They also know when to move. I've been in the
yeah,
same company 15 years. I'm happy I've moved within it. But if I'd go back in time and it was today, I would definitely leap more
yeah,
because now you can. People aren't stagnant in all these positions that, sorry, my generation really has been stuck. You're younger than me. Um,
yeah.
so if you had to give one piece of advice of someone
Mm.
who, is scared, but they're doing it anyway, what would you tell them?
Mm. You're not starting from scratch. Everything in your life is contributing to who you are now and where you're headed. When we think we're starting over, we're actually building on where we've come from.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself credit for that.
Oh, I love it. Well, and it's also, to me, I wouldn't be where I am today without all those steps. Like I just, and that's part of age. Like, I think the older I get, the more the wisdom of like, oh, everyone's like, oh, would you go back to high school? I'm like, no. I love where I am today because every step led me to today. Yes, there's heartache, there's
Yeah,
challenges, there's everything. But to me, I'm the best version today. Tomorrow will be even better. And I think if you
right.
skip anything, how do so it's
Yeah, and I
amazing.
think the other thing is that they feel like, so if you're switching industries or starting something new, it can feel like, oh, I'm starting from scratch. Like, I have oh my God, I'm going to have to figure out everything over again. It's like, no, actually, it's likely that the folks you've already worked with, even 30 years ago, 10 years ago, are still in your corner. You may interact with them in a different way. What worked for you in switching careers or switching jobs in the past is likely going to be an indicator of what the next step is going to look like, or how you're going to figure out the next step. So to believe that you're starting from scratch denies you
Mhm.
the credit and the information, the data that you've already collected about what uniquely works for you. So recognizing that you already have a PhD and you're just adding to it, really, it just gives you so much more to work with.
Yeah. And I do think that that's a little bit of like, not to go down the negative road, but I see a lot of, companies really trying to replace people that have been there a long time and they really want the younger
Yeah,
generation. It's like, but you're forgetting all these years of we've gone through it. We know we can
yeah,
learn from it. And while I'm not discrediting like, oh, you always want new people and new ideas, but part of my history is all the years and someone else similar to me, that I just think is so important. You can't forget. We've done it. We've done a lot. I've done a lot.
it's true.
Been around for
It's
just a
true.
few days. Is there anything I
Likewise.
haven't asked you about you? Because then I want to ask you
Mm,
my last question. But is there anything like, because as I said, you're so inspiring and doing, you have the background, you've changed your life, you found a way to help others in so many
yeah.
ways, Laurre. Like you are so inspiring. Is there something I didn't ask you that you'd like to share about you and what you do? I'd love to ask you that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I would say, one of the things that I've focused on the last few years is around creating community for women business owners.
Mm-hmm.
That there is, I think there's something really unique about how women do business differently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that we are natural community builders, we're natural cheerleaders for one another. We want to collaborate more than compete. And, there's been so many books and things about this, about the fact that with more women in leadership positions, um, businesses, politics, communities will run differently. And I feel like a lot of my time and attention is on building that kind of leadership and building the community of women in business talking to one another, because there's something really special when just women business owners connect with one another. I think that it goes back to the first thing I said, which is
Yeah.
us being able to express vulnerability and feeling safe doing that with one another allows more real conversations, connections to happen. And actually, that helps business. That helps and fosters, foreign relations, that kind of ability to be real, genuine, and empowered from that place. So I would say, just, any women business owners out there want to chat, I am always open to that. And especially women who are leading in gathering women in business together.
Yeah, I love it, and that's I was hoping you were actually going to mention that, and that's why I created Herstories, because women are so inspiring, and the more we help tell each other's stories, and that's what to me, and I told you this recently that I always felt it was history. It was always about the men, and no discredit. Men are fabulous, love them, but women are always. We never want to talk about ourselves. We never want to say how we're successful, and I think that that's a generalization, but I think it's true. And I think women can help each other be successful and be each other's cheerleader. And I think that's something unique about women DNA, a woman's DNA. And I love that you do it. And I see when local in your community and things that you do, I think it's we're going to help each other and help women be more,
Yeah.
I always love hearing that, there's so many third world countries. The minute you give women the ability to have their own businesses, the entire society improves. And
Yeah.
those are the stories that I'm like, we can do that at our own community levels as well.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
as always, could talk to you forever. And I hope this is one of many conversations. You and I have a lot in common, and would love to have you again. I would love to leave you with one question. The final question is, what inspires you? What empowers you, Laurre, as you as a woman?
What empowers me is believing in something beyond myself, which is, it gets me out of my own way. And when I believe in something so wholeheartedly, like women doing business differently, it helps me be brave. When I see the potential for changing the way we interact with one another and the way we can better connect with one another, I'm then encouraged to be scared and doing it anyway. So I would say what empowers me is something that's big enough that gets me through my discomfort. It also really delights me and inspires me when people are out in the world just going for it. And going for it in a way where they're not paying attention to what other people think. I don't have that. Like, I pay attention to what everybody thinks. Like, I over worry and over analyze. And so I'm so impressed and inspired by people who just do things and lead without overthinking or over listening to everybody else.
Yeah, no, it's true. And sometimes shutting out the noise,
Yeah,
then and just listen to yourself makes such a difference.
yeah.
Laurre, I'm so happy to talk to you. And as you inspire me every day. I love seeing what you do. You make a
Thank you.
difference in so many women's lives, and mine included. And it's been an honor talking to you. And I hope you come back another time to Her Stories.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you so much, Elaine.
Thank you. And stay tuned for the next episode of Her Stories.